Thank you, Feridun.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Emma. So welcome everyone to my session on Back to Basics in Dynamics 365, or the platform, whatever you want to call it, security. I hope you've all had a good day so far, and hopefully that this session will also be of interest to you. Right, so let's get going. So that's me, Feridun Kadir, and I'm going to be talking to you for about the next 45 minutes on this topic. I have to say there's a lot to cover. I don't want to rush it, but at the same time, if we don't get to cover everything, please don't be disappointed. The slides are going to be posted, as will a recording of the session. And this is roughly what I'm hoping to cover, these bullet point items. And this really is aimed at those that are new to the platform, or perhaps people that want a refresher, or maybe people are just coming to check that I'm telling them the right things. So if you do hear something and you think, oh, that doesn't sound right, I'm not infallible. Feel free to challenge or question things that I say in the chat, or indeed, if you do want to ask a question, don't be shy. I do like to, it's always interesting to hear what people say. And often I find I learn from questions as well. Just a few bits about me. I've been in the dynamics space for quite some time now, all the way back from version 1.2 of CRM, as it was called in those days. And I work as a freelance consultant doing almost everything with the product, but I'm not a developer, even though I've tried. It doesn't mean I can't do it, you can't do everything, can you? But I also deliver training courses, and I'm involved in the UG over here in England on the UK committee, and also I organise the Cambridge local group along with some other people. And it'd be nice to see people in person one day again, very soon, I hope. So there's some contact details there. Feel free to reach out to me using whatever method you like. I think I mentioned this already. For the questions, just pop them in the chat. I will stop periodically, and then Emma can also remind me to stop if I forget. And I'm more than happy for people to speak up and ask questions as well. Right, so talked about the slides. So let's go straight into it, and let's start with users and security roles. And let's think about what is the purpose of the security model. Now, in a more classroom setting, I would stop here and not show the bullet points there and get people to tell me what they think the purpose of the security model is, but I don't think that's going to work so well here. So I think as far as the platform's concerned, its principal purpose is to control access to records. We have data in the system, in various different entities, accounts, contacts, and so on. And we need people to be able to work with that data, modify that data, or see that data. We need to control that. But also the security model can be used to control access to certain features. And one thing that I found especially in sales organizations that managers get quite scared on is, oh, you mean my salespeople can export everything to Excel and run off with the data and go and work with someone else? So you say, well, don't worry too much, because that is a permission that you can actually remove from people, and so don't be too worried about that. But also you can use security to control access to forms. So you may well know that when you're working in model-driven apps and you open a record, you get to see a particular layout, and you can have different forms that maybe are more useful for different departments. And just to reduce the clutter of form choice, you can use security roles to control which forms people see, which dashboards they can see, and so on. So in this case, it's not so much controlling access to data, but it's more tailoring the UI to make it a little bit more friendly for people. What else? And we can extend that idea, because when people are logged in, they won't see things that they don't have access to and features that they're not available to them. So the interface does a very good job of not showing the delete button. For example, if you're not allowed to delete things, it won't show you opportunities if you're not allowed to work with opportunities. And prior to the idea of apps, when they first appeared, using security roles to sort of slim down the app by making sure people didn't have privileges to the things that they shouldn't work with. That was a good way of slimming down the interface. But now, of course, please don't forget apps, which is a much better way, I think, of providing a tailored user interface to different departments. If you haven't worked with apps, please go and check it out. It's not part of this discussion today, but just very briefly, with an app, you can say exactly what should be in the sitemap, exactly which entities should be shown, which forms, with which dashboards, and so on. So it's highly tuned to the needs of a particular group of users. And of course, you would have multiple apps for different departments, maybe. And of course, when you install the product, you get all the Microsoft first-party app sales and service and marketing and so on. But that's something you can build on. So to work with the Power Platform or any of the Dynamics 365 apps with the CDS, the Common Data Service, users must have an account of some form or another. And everything that happens is done in the name of the logged in user. So a user might create a record. So Dynamics will automatically say, right, this record was created by Fred, it was modified by Fred. And if auditing has been switched on, that's an optional thing that you need to do. It will also track what's changed with the record, who changed the field, who deleted the record, and so on. Most people, I think, are using the online Dynamics product now, and that requires using an Office 365 work account, which is in Azure AD. But let's not forget people that are still on premises. And in this case, to use Dynamics on premises, we have to have an Active Directory set up, and it'll be your Active Directory user account that is used to log on. And there's really no way around that for interactive use. Now, there is a whole other type of user that I'm not going to go into, which is for non-interactive use. And this requires doing all sorts of fancy things with app registrations in Azure and so on. So if you're writing programs to interact with the platform without anybody being logged on, maybe an integration piece, go and check that out. So I'm specifically talking about people who browse to the interface, log in and do work. Now, before anybody can do anything while they're logged in as a user, they must have what's called a security role. So the security role belongs to the user. So you assign those to the user. We don't give privileges directly to a user account, not in this way that I'm talking about now. And also, you'll see later on that a user can belong to a team or several teams, and think of teams as a group. And we can also assign security roles to teams. So those security roles that are given to the user, and they can have multiple roles, and to all of the teams that they belong to, will define what the user can do. Now, if we look at a security role, and I'll show you one in a moment, you'll see that there are permissions listed there, and we have to look at two things: a specific privilege, which is an action that the user can perform, like viewing a record or modifying it and so on, and an access level, which is, I've called here the scope of the action. Another way of looking at it is which set of records can they exercise that privilege on. So can I delete only the records that I own? Can I delete any record? And that's all defined in the security role. And then there are those other task-based privileges, which are not specific to any particular entity. So we can say you are allowed to export to Excel, in which case you can export any record type, or you can't. And there are several of permissions like that one. Now, I say here that in order to log in and use Dynamics 365 online, a user must have at least one security role assigned to their record. But it turns out that with recent changes to how Dynamics Online works, that's not strictly true, and I'll come back to that later on. Now, if we think about security roles, there are quite a few available out of the box. So let me just drag over a screen so you can see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to just bring my browser over here. Hopefully you can see all that. And I am in the classic interface, and I've gone over to the security area. Here's security roles. This is a recent trial that I've set up, and you'll see here a whole raft of security roles. I think almost all of them, bar one or two, are out of the box. Notice how a lot of them are sort of job oriented. So CSR manager, customer service rep manager, or sales manager, salesperson, and so on. But some of the others are more to do with a specific feature. So for example, forecast manager and forecast user. So that's to do with the sales forecasting thing, and so on. So these are all the security roles. If I just open one up, so let's have a look at sales manager and bring that over here. So you'll see a number of different tabs, and there's the name of the role. Now, with these out-of-the-box ones, you can change the name if you want, but I'm going to suggest that you don't, and I'll come back to that point as well. And then as we look over all of these different tabs, you'll begin to see the privileges and the entities that they apply to. So for core records, I'm not going to go into every single one of these. There's far too much to do. But let's just look at some of the more common ones. So there's the account line, and you'll see the headings: create, read, write, delete, and so on. And then you've got this fancy color circle. There's a key to that circle at the bottom. And this at the bottom is the scope, the access level. And it's saying for which accounts the user can exercise that particular privilege on. So let's take a nice easy one. The green circle, organization. For the read privilege, that means any user that has this role can see any account record regardless of who owns the record, and so on. If I scroll down, you'll see some of the miscellaneous privileges. Some of them might be admin related, some of them might be relevant to end users. Again, I won't go into all of these. Many of these will be either on or off, and we don't have these intermediate levels. And I'm going to explain these also a little bit later on. And then as you go to the other tabs, some stuff to do with marketing, stuff to do with the sales area, and some specific privileges to do with sales, into the service area, and so on. And as we move sort of over here, we're now getting into some more admin related things. And now this one is a mystery. If anybody really can explain to me why this tab is here and why this shows up, I would be delighted to know. I've asked lots and lots of people, and nobody's ever managed to tell me what the purpose of this is. I've never changed anything here. If you use business process flows, they will all show up here. And again, I will come back to that later on. So anyway, let's put that out of the way and come back to my slides. So they're all there. These will also show up in the make.powerapps.com as well. But I'm still, having used the old method for so long, I'm still slowly moving across to the new way of doing things. Now, in terms of using the security roles, you can use the ones out of the box and not change them at all. I'd say that was highly unlikely. Or you could modify them to suit your own requirements. Or what I would suggest you do, and I've called that out in blue, is copy an out of the box role and then modify that. Because I think it's quite nice to keep all the out of the box roles there just in case. So you could just highlight one like that, go into there, copy role, and give it your own name. So let's just call it my marketing manager role for the business. And then you can do what you like with it. And just wait for that to open up. Oh, okay. Well, let's just quickly do that. Right. And so there's my copy of the role, and I can do what I like with it. And I know that I've always got the out of the box role to come back to should I need to. Or you can just create a new role, and by doing that, and now that's going to cause you a lot of work, because if you say new, and you'll find that you get all these empty circles, and then you've got to go and decide what each one should be. So I think it's probably a little easier to do the copy and then untick the things that you don't need. Now, there is a little caveat with this, is that if new privileges or entities are released by Microsoft, you might find you have to go and revisit your copies and give privileges, add those privileges in. And this did, I did find this one with the system customizer role that I had duplicated for someone. And then one day we found they couldn't change field properties on a form, and I had to log it with Microsoft because I couldn't work out what was going on, and there was this obscure privilege that was missing from the duplicated system customizer role. So just watch out for things like that. Now, let's have a look at privileges. So the privileges define what the user can perform, and there's a whole set of privileges, but you need to combine the privilege with the entity. Now, just to be super clear, when I say write, that's exactly the same as change, modify, update, or any other verb that you like to use. Here's the full set of privileges. I think most of them are fairly obvious as to what they mean. Maybe I'm going to guess that append and append to perhaps cause the most confusion until you've got your head around it. But even they're okay once you've got your mind around what they mean. Assign. So any record that's created in Dynamics has an owner, unless it's of a particular ownership type, but that's a customization thing. So let's just not get into that complication. When you create a record, you are the owner of that record. If you're allowed to change the owner because you have the assigned privilege, then you can make someone else the owner, or indeed anybody that's got the assigned privilege to that record can change the owner of that record. And if you assign the record to someone else, then because you are no longer the owner, that may affect the rights that you have to that record. But again, it all depends on the roles that you have and so on. Sharing is a way of dealing with sharing and giving an access to a single record to another person or another team. And this is a way of, I guess, in some ways you might say it's not bypassing the security role model, but that might help you think of what it means. It means that the other person doesn't have access because of their security roles. You do. They need to see that record. So rather than bugging the administrator to sort things out, you can just say, I'm going to share this record to you. And I'll say a bit more about that. Let's come back and look at append and append to. Now, in lots of places in Dynamics, we can link one record to another. And out of the box, we all have the privileges to do that because that's what the product is about. We're going to store information and we're going to relate one thing to another. For example, notes. Think of a note as one of those yellow sticky things that you can put on a contact record just by going into the timeline notes, enter a note. Now you wouldn't think twice about the privileges behind that, but there are privileges required, and the out-of-the-box roles have them because that's what people tend to need to do a lot of the time. So for this to work from a security point of view, notes is its own entity, contact is its own entity. So for this to show up and you to be allowed to do it, you need two privileges. You need, on the note, the append privilege, which means you are allowed to connect notes to other records. And on the contact entity, you need the append to privilege, which means other records can be linked to this one. So you need the two sides for this to work. I've just realized I've been talking for 20 minutes. Do we have any questions, Emma?
No, nothing's come through.
Excellent. Okay, so that means either people know it all or they're just completely flummoxed. Okay, let's carry on then. Okay, good. So there's a little screenshot of the privileges in the security role user interface, which I've shown you earlier. So we'll say a bit more about the colors of the circles in just a moment. And there are some of the miscellaneous privileges. Okay, so thinking about the scope of the privilege, let's say a user is allowed to modify or write to accounts. So they can open up an account record, make changes to the fields within there, and so on. But how do we know which records can the user modify? To answer that question, we have to think about something called business units. And I'll say it now in case I forget later. Just because you own a record, that doesn't necessarily give you all the privileges to do anything with that record. We still have to look at the security roles and what they say about what you're allowed to do. Right, so let's go over to business units and talk about those and see how they relate to the security model. So one way to think of a business unit is it acts as a security boundary. Any user that is added to Dynamics must be placed in a business unit. A business unit can also contain teams, which are groups of users. And also when we add security roles, we add a security role to a business unit, and we'll explore what that means. Now, when Dynamics is first set up or installed with an on-premise one, there's always one business unit to start with, and that's sometimes called the root business unit, and it tends to have the same name as your instance, but you can go and change that name. Now, a lot of people will stick with the one business unit, especially if they're a smaller company, not many users, but larger organizations might well say, actually, our security model means that we need to have more business units. And the reason they'll do that is because they've got an identifiable group of users or a department that needs to say that says only people in our department should be allowed to do certain things to these records. So in that case, it kind of makes sense to have a business unit for that department. So it's similar to an organization chart, but don't look at an organization chart and say, oh, because there are 10 departments, I need to create 10 business units. That's not the way to go about it. Think about security, and that will be your driver as to whether you need business units. If you're not sure, don't create one. And when you realize you need one, you can add one in. And then if you do add one in or several, you can always change your mind and get rid of them again. Okay. Users belong to one business unit, but only one. And once you've set up a hierarchy of several business units, you can move your users around, of course. Otherwise, what would be the point? To different business units. So let's just have a quick look at that. Let's come back here. So if I head over to security, you'll see business units. And I've got a trial called FK APR 20. And that's my root business unit. I can tell straight away because the root one doesn't have a parent. That was added for me. I didn't do that. And then I've added a couple more called sales and service. And if I look at the sales one, you'll see we have this very antique looking form all the way back from 2011 that's showing me the information for the business unit. And really the only key thing here is that its parent is that one. If I click here on the left, I can see I have one user in this business unit. Okay. Right. Okay. So let's just summarize what you can do with the various business units. And I think the key thing really is that the root one, the top of the tree, can't have a parent, and you can't disable it or delete it because that would kind of kill the system. Okay, so now we know a little bit about business units. If we come back to that question, which account records or entity, which account records, which is an entity, can the user modify, which is our action? And this is what the access level in the security role is defining. Okay, so we have to consider who owns the record and the business unit that the user belongs to. Now, just for completeness, sharing is also relevant. But having said that, let's just put that to one side to simplify our discussion here. So here are the 5 access levels going from none, user, business unit, parent-child, and organization. So let's go through them. So we're talking about changing accounts. If on the security role, my level is none, then I can't change any account records at all, even if I own the record, and also even if somebody shares the record to me, because the none level just stops that action completely. If we then move up a level, so this is the circle with a quarter filled in yellow, user level, that means I can use whatever the privilege is, maybe changing accounts, any records that I owned, and any records that are shared directly to me. Okay. And the next level is business unit level. So this extends the remit of records that I can work on, as well as everything I had at user level. Then I can also use that privilege for any records that are owned by people in the same business unit as me. So it's more like a departmental privilege. And it also includes any records shared not just to me, but to other users in the same business unit as me as well. And then you can see what's coming. The next level is called parent-child, and this extends the records that can be worked with to not just the business unit that the user belongs to, but also all child business units below that one, no matter how deep the tree goes. So as far as business unit hierarchy, I don't think there's a limit to how many levels you can have. I would suggest you don't make it too complicated because it's going to be tricky to manage. So that's the parent-child level. And then, of course, if we go to the last one, which is the organization level, then it doesn't matter who owns the record, you can use that privilege. And I guess that one and the none one are perhaps the easiest to understand. Okay. Do we have any queries on this?
Yeah, there was a couple of questions. It was, please confirm, do business units have their own security roles? If yes, do they override the individual user security role?
Security roles are not allocated to business units, so I guess the answer to that is no.
Okay. Oh, and it just says, please, can you zoom in a bit for better visibility if possible?
When I'm, oh, do you mean when I'm doing these bits? I guess.
Yeah, probably. The slide looks okay. Oh yes, yeah, he said yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah. I'll just do something like that. Maybe that will help bring something else across. Yeah, excellent. Okay.
That's
Anything
it.
else?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Let's carry on. Right. So if you have an instance with just the one business unit, then those 3 levels that I've written out there amount to effectively the same, because what we're saying is that if you set the level to business unit level or parent-child or organization, well, there is only one business unit, so the levels don't really make any change, because parent-child, well, there is only the one, organization, there is only the one. So it's only when you have more than one that those parent, child, and organization levels make a difference. Okay, so security roles belong to a business unit. So what does that mean? Well, it means that if I go to create a security role, so come back to security and then say security roles, and then say new, what you'll see is that you have to specify a business unit. So if I just put in here director of marketing, for example, then that role is available in this business unit. That's all it means. It means where can this role be used? Because what you'll find is that a user can only be allocated roles that are available in their business unit. So if I was to look at a user who is part of this business unit, they could be given this role. And that's all that means. Now, one thing to watch for is you see where we've gone to security roles and it says business unit and I'm on the root. If I change that to sales to see the roles that I have here and click new, unfortunately, it always sets this to the root. So sometimes I forget that and I have to go and do it all over again. So if you really want a role to only be available in one business unit, you have to make sure you set it here. And then this role, so let's call it the sales special role, that role will only be available here. So if I go and see, there it is, special role. If I now go back to the root, we don't have a sales special role. Okay, so why would you have roles in just one or a few security, a few business units? Maybe if the role is for a very specific job that only exists in that business unit and nowhere else, that might be a good reason for doing that. But I'm going to say to you, although that's possible, don't do that. Okay, and I'll come back to that in a minute. So here's I'm not sure about this color scheme. Now, one thing that the product does, if you create a role in a business unit, it automatically makes it available in all business units below the one where you made it. So if you make one at the root, it's available everywhere. On the other hand, if I make one here in this service business unit, it will be available here, here, and here. So anybody in projects or in support or in service can be given that security role. Okay, and that's called inherited. So let's just have a look at that. So the one I created here, Director of Marketing in the FK April 21, if I now switch to sales, you'll see Director of Marketing there as well. If we look at that role, you'll see this line that tells you it's an inherited role, which means we can't change it. In order to change it, we have to go to where it was defined. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell you where it was defined here. You'll just have to work that out. And if you've got thousands of business units, good luck with that. There's an annoying thing on this screen. So I can make some changes here. Even though you're not allowed to change it. And then when you finish faffing around with your circles, you'll see there's no save button. Okay, so just watch out for that. If you see that, don't try and modify it. So we'll close that and we can't do anything with it. Okay. So one thing about security roles is if you're working with solutions and you want to move your changes to security roles from one instance to another, you can add security roles into a solution, but only the ones that are in the root business unit. So I think for that reason, and also to keep life simple, I would say to you, don't create security roles in lower level business units, only ever do them at the root. Then you know they're everywhere. If you know that if you need to change something, you need to go to the root where it's defined, and it's much, much easier to manage. Okay. Unless anybody's got any thoughts on that or wants to say no, they've got a good reason for doing them in a lower business unit, I'd be delighted to hear it. So can you have security roles with the same name in a single business unit? Well, let's have a look. So let's pop over to here. So here is Director of Marketing in the, no, that wasn't the one I did. I called it here, Sales Special Role. So if I say new and change this to sales, and then say Sales Special Role and click Save, it says role error, the role already exists. But if we cheat and say new security role and leave it at the root, and let's call it Sales Special Role again, and say save and close, this time it doesn't mind. I don't get a warning. And now you'll see I have it twice. Now, although I capitalized one, it's not case sensitive. And if I had put the capital S, it would have still appeared. So one of them was defined here. and the other one came from the root. So just watch out for that. And again, another reason not to have roles created at lower business units. Okay, so that's just telling you what I just showed you. Right, so let's have a look at managing some security roles. Okay, so firstly, just a few bits on the security role itself, and it would help if I didn't pick that one. So let's go to the root and take this one. So to decide what privilege people should have, you just click on the circle, and as you toggle through, it just changes. But if you click the entity level, it toggles the entire row. So there's a little shortcut for you. And also, if you do the delete, it goes all the way through. You'll notice some gaps. So for some entities, some of the privileges are not relevant. So this will be for some special entities. And also things like product, which is an organization-owned entity, which means it can't have owners. Therefore, the assign and share privileges are not relevant. And as you toggle through the privileges, you don't get the user level, business unit, and parent-child levels. So when you create a custom entity, one of the choices you have is whether it's going to be user or team-owned or organization-owned. If you go with organization-owned, that means that you only get the two levels. You either have access or you don't, and you don't get the assign and share privileges. So, so that's editing the role. If we go back and look at our users, then if I take a user, then without opening the record, you have the manage roles on the command bar, and this just shows you with the ticks which ones they have, and then you can give them extra ones and so on. If you select more than one person and do manage roles, oh, okay, so I made a mistake there. Let's do these two from the same business unit. Then what we can do is give them additional roles. We can't do anything to the roles that they already have because we can't show that in this interface. Or if you go into a user's record, you also have the manage roles there, but you also can have a quick glance at the roles that they have from the related items area. So a number of different ways of managing the roles. Now, if I move a user to a different BU, then the user still owns all the records, but if you think about the levels and the access levels, that might mean that other users won't have access to this user's records because, depending on what levels you've set in the security roles, then they fall out of the scope. And the user that you move will end up having no security roles, and you'll need to give them roles at the new BU. And I think the reason that this happens is that Dynamics says, well, if I'm moving them to a new BU, the roles that they have already might not be available in the new one. Therefore, I'll just give them nothing and let the administrator decide what they should have. And I guess if you're moving them to a BU, it's a change of job anyway, and maybe you should be reevaluating their security. Users in the root business unit. There is nothing special about being in the root business unit. And people, I think, sometimes think this, that you might add a user to a child business unit, and they could easily have more privileges than a user at the root. It really depends on the levels that have been set in the security roles that the user has. Now, there are a couple of special roles, in particular, system administrator. Any user that has this role can do anything. And you should have at least two people, just in case something happens to one of your users. There's another role that's called System Customizer. It's now to the box one. They can do lots of stuff to customize the system, but they can only see their own records. So if you perhaps bring in a consultant in to do stuff and there's data that you don't really want them to see because it's sensitive, don't give them the administrator role. You could consider giving them this role, and then they can do things but only see records that they create. That I've already discussed. All right, let's move on to teams. Teams can contain users. A bit like a user, a team can only belong to one business unit, but the team members can come from anywhere in the instance, not just from the business unit where the team was created. And this is useful when we want to make things available to somebody in another business unit, but not necessarily to all other users. So I've got user A here that's in this BU, and I've made user A a member of this team that belongs to this business unit. And so user A and user B are both in team A now, in the West BU. User A and user B can belong to as many teams as you like. I'm just looking at the time, and I'm going to speed up a little bit because I've got quite a lot I want to speak to you about. Now, for team types, there are 4 different teams: owner, access, and 2 to do with Azure Active Directory, fairly recent. They can all own records except access teams. So some people like to use teams to own records rather than individuals. You can do that, but the team must have at least one security role that allows it access to the record types that you want it to own. Okay. If somebody has multiple roles, then they will get the most generous across all of the roles. So user might have multiple roles. They may belong to multiple teams, and each of those teams might have multiple roles. So whatever is the most generous across all of that is what the user will end up having. So here's a little question for you. Here's a little structure, 5 business units. I've got a manager user in the Europe business unit, and I would like that manager to have access to records in the Europe and the USA business units, but not any of the others. How might we do that? You can't use the levels, because if you think of the levels, user level gives him access to his own records, or her. Business unit level would give the person access to all records in Europe. Parent child in Europe and below, there's nothing below. And then the next level up is organization, would give the person access to everything, which is not what the requirement is. So the way to do that is we create a team in the USA business unit, give the team in that USA the relevant roles, and then add the manager to the team. So then the manager has access to the Europe stuff through his own roles, and also access to the USA by virtue of being a member of that team in the USA. So you kind of think of it as a guest access maybe to people outside of that business unit. Access teams, they don't own records, but they can be used for sharing. So users can share to a user. They can also share to teams, whether it's an owner team or an access team. Access teams are more efficient because of the fact that they don't own records. Azure AD teams, they can own records and can have security roles assigned to them. The point of these is that they are managed outside of Dynamics in Office 365, and there are 2 types, Office 365 and security teams, and the members of those teams are based on the Azure group membership. So this might be more appropriate where somebody needs to manage things in Office 365 and not really come into Dynamics. So you can create a team, link it to the Azure team, and then the membership is controlled outside of Dynamics. And there are steps to do that. It's a little bit convoluted because you've got to go and find some GUIDs, but it's all documented in the Microsoft stuff. But you can't manage the membership in Dynamics. That's the key thing. It's all done in Azure. Now, coming back to logging in with no roles, I said that everybody has to have at least one security role in their name, and that's indeed what used to be the case. And if you browse to that URL in the past, if you did browse to that URL in the past, you'll see that everybody has to have at least one security role. Even if they're a member of a team, it won't work properly. But that's changed now, because what you can do is log in with no roles directly assigned to the user, as long as they've got some roles assigned to them at the team level, and then they can get in. So that might make things a little simpler for managing security roles. Okay, so that we've discussed. So managing security can become a mess over time as you add custom entities and they need all their own security. The size of the organization grows, you add users and so on. So if you can come up with some strategy for dealing with this at the beginning, that will save you a lot of time. So there are many, many different ways of managing this. Just a few for you to think about. One approach is to say, right, we'll have a baseline role that we give to everybody that has whatever privileges everyone needs. And then we'll have an incremental role that gives extra privileges only. So this role would only have a few circles colored. And then if somebody is a salesperson, they get the baseline and the salesperson. They still have two roles, and then they get the combination across the two is what they effectively get. And then you can extend that by saying, well, actually, if they're a sales manager, they get the baseline, the salesperson, and the sales manager. So they now have three roles, and the effective is the combination across the all three. An alternative way of doing that is we're only going to give one role to each person. That role will match their job name, and that role will have everything they need. So they'll get the salesperson or the sales manager role. That may be simpler in some ways, but in other ways it may be harder, because if you decide there's a new entity that needs setting up in terms of privileges, or you want to change the privileges, you've got to visit more roles, because you've got to visit the salesperson one and the sales manager to adjust it. Whereas in the other scheme, you might just only need to visit the baseline. But of course, all of this depends on how, what your security needs are. Other options will be, let's try and not give roles to people directly. Just let's do it through teams, and then we put people into the relevant teams, and you can try and manage it there. So that's, I guess the equivalent in Windows, the file system is using NTF permissions and groups. So maybe that's less management there. So we talked about sharing. Users can give access to other users or teams on a per record basis, but the sharing user must have the share privilege for the entity. And privileges that the sharing user doesn't have are not selectable. So that's the sharing there, and you can see that we can't select delete and assign because the sharer doesn't have those privilege. The sharer can select a privilege that the person shared to doesn't have. So for example, if I gave I'm giving that person the right privilege, I don't know whether he has got the right privilege at all. He might not have it, in which case my sharing will be ineffective. So that's one of the issues with sharing. If you have lots of sharing going on, maybe your security model isn't right and you need to revisit it. If you don't like the idea of sharing, then you can turn it off, because sharing is a privilege in the security role that you can allow or not. Now, I'm really running out of time because we only got about 5 minutes, I guess. So let me just briefly touch on hierarchy security. This is an extension to the security model that goes beyond security roles. And the idea is that we give access to managers to records owned by their staff. Now, there is a level that we have to think about. There are two ways of managing this. We can either do it using manager or position hierarchy. This is applies to all users, and the administrator chooses one or the other. The manager hierarchy uses the manager lookup on the user record. And if we do this, then the manager will get access to the records of users that they have that are their direct reports, and they'll also they'll have read access to their indirect reports, so the child users. Okay, so that's manager hierarchy. I think I'll always pass that one. Position hierarchy uses a slightly newer idea. There's a thing called a position record, and the position record might be a job title, and then we link the user to a position. Similar to the manager hierarchy, you will have access to records of users in lower positions. Now, if you elect to use this hierarchy, the manager field isn't relevant. So for example, The CEO position has read-write access to the VP of Sales positions data, but only read access to the sales manager, and similarly for the lower down positions. Now, this is all set up in security, and you'll see first you have to switch it on. It's not on by default. You either use that one or the other one, and you choose how many levels deep you want it to go in terms of the hierarchy of your users, and you can decide which entities it's going to apply for. The default is all of them, and you can select some and take them out. I'd say it's not something I've seen used very much at all, but it's there as an option. Right, so let me just whiz through to some other ones that I've already discussed. Activity entities, so this would be faxes, letters, emails, phone calls, are secured collectively as a single thing called activity. So that does mean, I'm afraid, that you can't secure emails differently from appointments and differently from tasks. It's all of them are treated in a single row in the security role. If you create custom entities, then nobody has access to those. You've got to go to your security roles and decide what privileges people should have, though the administrator role and the customizer role automatically have access to all custom entities. Field security is something else that you should look at. Security roles give you access to the row of an entity. So if I am allowed to work with an account record, I can do anything to any field. If there's an important field that maybe I shouldn't see or I'm not allowed to change, then you can use field security to manage that. And this describes what can happen and what can't happen under the various scenarios. Just moving quickly to access teams. Sharing is perhaps a bit tricky for users because they go to the record, click the sharing button, and they have to decide which privileges to select. And they think, oh, well, I don't know which ones to do. Well, you can use access teams as a way of doing automatic sharing. Let me just see if I can quickly bring this up and talk about it rather than, so let's go over to here. And if I go and look at this one, I think. Right, so let's say I'm on an opportunity and I want a colleague to have access to this opportunity. Then what we can do is, it's interesting. Oh, I'm in the, I was hoping to see something here. Why am I not seeing something here? Oh, here it is. I can add a user and say I want user Delta to see this, and I click add. So I was a bit flummoxed by the empty grid. So what I've done there is I've got a little subgrid of users, and all I've done is added in a user, and the act of doing that has automatically shared this opportunity to that user according to a predefined template. So that predefined template, if I can just find the right tab, is called an access team template. And there it is. If we go to the security area, you'll see access team templates, and there is one out of the box defined. And this is saying that automatic sharing gives the privileges that have been selected here. So if we just go and look at the, no, I won't look at the form because it's not enough time now. But you have to add in a special form. Let me just show it to you here. So it's a subgrid. You have to select this, all record types, users, and this is the key thing, default view, associated record team members. And by doing that, the system will do this automatic sharing. And in order to do that automatic sharing, it creates access teams behind the scenes. And I'll just show you where they are, but you don't need to touch them or fiddle with them. But if I clear all that and say results, you see these ones with the GUIDs. These have been created automatically by Dynamics when I use that automatic sharing. So if I grab one here, and you'll see it's an access team. That one of these GUIDs will be the opportunity that was shared, and that's the person it was shared to. And so Dynamics manages all that for you. And I think this is something that people do like. Right, very, very, very quickly. Business flows, business process flows are their own entity. They are a custom entity, so they participate in security. So you can use security roles to decide which business process flows people can use and not use. So they're all listed here on the business process flows tab. And then forms and dashboards, we can have multiple forms, multiple dashboards through customization. You can also use security roles to decide which forms people should see. And it is perfectly reasonable to create a security role just to manage access to forms. And then that kind of sums it all up, where all the different things come into play. There's a user who has security roles and field security profiles that I didn't really have time to show you. That defines what they can see. Also, any record shared to that user. But you also have to think about all the teams that they belong to and the roles and profiles that the team has and record shared to the teams. And also if hierarchy security is enabled. So, sorry about rushing through the end, but there is a lot to talk about. I hope that unraveled some of the mysteries of security for you. If you have any questions, I would be delighted to take them. No, sounds like there's no questions.
Looks like there's no questions. I think everyone's rushing off to the next meeting.
I know. Someone's asked, are there any mass assignment tools? Do you mean for changing the owner of users? Feel free to unmute and give me some more context there, David.
Yeah, so I guess my question, I'm used to using F&O, and there we can do massive imports of security when you're setting up an initial system.
Right.
And if you've got 200 or so users to do in one go, having the ability to do some kind of import or mass assignment is really useful.
Right. So in terms of records, you can bulk assign records. But have you come across XRM Toolbox?
Yes.
Yeah, that's got a lot of tools for helping you manage security and reporting on who's got what and changing things. So out of the box, it's a little bit trickier. Probably the answer is no, but there are third-party stuff.
No worries. Great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your question. So Wolfgang says, thanks for a great session. A refresher. Excellent. You're welcome. Right. And I think I have to rush off to the next session because I'm hosting it.
Thank you very much, Feridun, and thank you to everybody. Don't forget, we will share the slides and the session on the d365ug.com group, and I shall post the next sessions up in the chat.
Okay. See you all. See you in another session.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.